We have it on so many testimonies, Stu, from whistleblower doctors and nurses right now across America's hospitals that people are being systematically forced onto ventilators and they're deprived of life-saving treatments, all while their loved ones are kept out of the hospital. I mean, they're texting them frantically from parking lots of the hospital. They're kept out under the COVID rules, so they have no one to advocate for them. And recently, the Arkansas Medical Board started investigating doctors for saving thousands of lives with ivermectin because vaccines and ventilators are the only protocols allowed. And I have to tell you that over the weekend in DC, an attorney friend of mine with asthma and a positive COVID, she was fully alert and breathing on her own. She was approached by the medical staff and asked to consider being placed under sedation, get intubated, and placed on a ventilator. Needless to say, she declined. Well, not everyone is so lucky. I want to share with people what it is to be on a ventilator, because I think that some people may be under the mistaken impression that this is just another form of oxygen therapy. This is actually a mechanical ventilation, or what we refer to in medicine as forced air exchange between oxygen and carbon dioxide. It requires that you are intubated with a large tube. That means it is inserted into your airway. It's very uncomfortable. It's very anxiety provoking. And it is the opposite of what is needed in these COVID pneumonias. You have this thick, gunky stuff, and you're trying to slam air in. There's not going to be any oxygen exchange, right? You must be sedated. It is actually inhumane to put someone on a mechanical ventilator without totally snowing them. I want to read to you a couple of comments that people have made in social media.
Yeah.
On Twitter, Dark Matter Zine says, you can bet that COVID doctors have to choose, will get to choose who lives and who dies. You can bet they'll take the disabled people off the ventilators first so they can die to, quote, free up a bed. And another Twitter congressional says people only end up on ventilators because doctors choose to receive the $39,000 from the CDC to use one. I guess a human life does have a price. And lastly, Phil Phillips says, I'm boiling over the fact that the CDC will not, or the FDA for that matter, let doctors use anything that would work on people except on ventilators, because they're getting paid to do that. Stu, this is actually incredibly frightening. I think people need to understand. And what I'm suggesting is right now, hospitals seem to be very, very dangerous places. I would say avoid them at all cost. At the very, very worst, as sad as this sounds, I'd rather die at home with loved ones around me, not in some cold hospital room alone with my loved ones kept out in the parking lot.
When have we gotten away from the 99.989% survival rate? How about natural immunity, God-given immunity? How about just ride it out? It's a flu. Some people are going to be affected, more harshly than others, and that's when you become symptomatic. There's things like frequent ivermectin. Consult with a physician that actually cares. America's Frontline Doctors, Dr. Jane Ruby at protonmail.com, Dr. Brian Artis, Dr. Carrie Madej. These people have all made themselves available to you, but you're right. We exposed 2 doctors from Mayo with rather no digging at all. This Dr. Bennett, who said, if you get your news from OAN or YouTube, go die.